About a year ago, a little over a year ago, I went to my storage unit where I had stored, well, all the hard to get things that I would need to set up another snowboard production facility. And I had been storing them for years. Not really anything of value, white elephant kind of stuff. I had a base sander that didn't work, but it was super wide. I could sand a snowboard that was like 1.5 feet wide on it. Crazy stuff like that, but it has no value, like, because it wasn't working, but I could fix it, and some tooling that would be useless to anybody else. But I had all this stuff that basically I could take like $500 or $1,000 and this stuff and a couple months of work and have a full custom snowboard factory. And it was in storage. And about a year ago, I went to the storage unit, took all that out and threw it in the trash. I junked it all.
That was Marty Bonacci, and this is episode number 33 of the Not Snowboarding Podcast. I'm your host, Nate&rsquo. My buddy Paul and I sat down and chatted with Marty over Skype. We discussed Marty's new custom snowboard company, and Paul and Marty reminisced the good old days a bit, which was really quite funny because Paul used to work for Marty at one of the local mountains here. We got into the path that Marty took to building his first online business, which actually has nothing at all to do with snowboarding. And it was a really fun conversation. Marty is an amazing human in the ability of being able to deconstruct processes and see opportunities that, for whatever reason, others don't seem to see or act on. Before we get into the episode, I have to say a huge thank you to everyone that's been using the Amazon banner ad before shopping on Amazon. It's a great way to help support the podcast without costing you anything. Just go to the Not Snowboarding Podcast website, click on the Support the Podcast image on the right, and click through the banner ad at the bottom of the page before shopping on Amazon. You can also bookmark the page so that it's quick and easy to find on your browser. This and every episode of the podcast is sponsored by Shred Soles. Shred Soles are the only snowboarding-specific aftermarket insoles. They're canted at 4 degrees to help realign your body to a more natural and balanced riding posture. Every inch of the insoles were designed with snowboarding in mind. To that point, as opposed to a thick gel heel like you'll see on so many other insoles on the market, Shred Soles are actually designed to sink your heel back into the heel cup as deep as possible and stabilize it, thus reducing heel lift. I could go on forever. After all, I did design them. But the most important thing is that they're super, super comfortable. Through the end of this month, use discount code TOFURKY, that's TOFURKY, to get 25% off and free domestic shipping on everything at shredsoles.com. Finally, based on the feedback from many of you that have visited my page on Marty's website, the Custom Cult Snowboard website, I've worked together with Marty to bring the price down significantly, such that it's in line price-wise with any of the high-end boards on the market from traditional snowboard companies. On top of that, I'm offering a free 15-minute phone call with anyone that would like me to walk them through the process of configuring their own custom board. And if you decide to move forward at any point thereafterwards, by the end of the year, I'll also throw in an additional $100 off. So both the phone call and the additional $100 off are valid through the end of December. If you want my help in designing your very own custom snowboard, just shoot me an email at nate@shredsoles.com and we'll set up a time to chat. Okay, let's get into the episode with Marty and Paul.
So how's New Mexico treating you, Marty?
It's dry and sunny.
And you're still in Gallup?
No. I'm in Albuquerque at the moment.
Okay.
Just about to get my pass up at Taos and try and figure out my living situation for the winter so I can get some good riding in.
How far are you from Taos?
It's about 2.5 hours. There's a ski area right here. Like, there's a tram that comes down to Albuquerque from Sandia Peak, and there's a ski area there, but it's not the biggest place in the world, I'll say.
What's it called?
It's called Sandia Peak.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if I've actually ridden there. I always just drive north. either Santa Fe or Taos. But
That's the same thing that we do. I'm sitting here with Paul, and we are walking distance from our home mountain, but we drive 2.5, 3 hours, depending on how many stops we take, over to Seven Springs, probably just as often, if not more often, than we ride our local mountain.
yeah, I can't say as I blame you. I don't even know what your local mountain is. I think it's Liberty or something. But what I've seen of Seven Springs, which I've never been there, it looks sick.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You know Whitetail because you spent some time there when you were younger.
Yeah, Liberty's smaller than Whitetail, right?
That's about the same size. Whitetail's just newer. Whitetail was, open when you and I worked there. And Liberty's been open for a long time. So Whitetail's got high-speed quads and stuff like that. I think Liberty probably has a slightly better park, some funner jumps, and it's across the street. Outside of that, if we're not working, we're riding Seven Springs.
Or surfing.
Or that, yeah. Yeah, if there's a wave.
So you actually know Paul from back in the Whitetail days. How did that relationship start?
I was working at Whitetail, I guess kind of running their snowboard instruction program.
What year
Paul,
roughly is this?
I don't know. Paul, was it 94?
Yeah, maybe 90. Yeah, maybe 94.
Did Paul have hair at the time?
He did have hair at the time. He had long hair. I think he had a mullet.
Yes,
yeah, man. I was growing it all out, man. Wasn't a mullet. I was working on growing the front out.
I have a picture of this. We'll put it in the show notes for sure.
No, we don't need to.
That was awesome.
Hey, you had one too, man.
And you had a goatee. And I remember looking at you going, wow, look at this redneck. And then, but you were the sickest rider. You're so balls out and always happy.
That hasn't changed.
Just the hair part's changed. Probably for the better.
I've got less hair too, but I haven't gone so far as to shave my head because I look like an Auschwitz attendee.
So it's like 94 Whitetail. You're doing what, and Paul's doing what?
I was, I guess, Paul's boss, and he was teaching.
Yep. I was the one that he gave all the lessons to because I was the only one there all the time. I did the same.
Those were good days. It was, before you have kids and you don't really have to make much money to survive, and you're willing to sacrifice your finances to be able to be on the snow all day long.
You got paid?
Yeah, but I don't remember what I got paid, but I know it wasn't enough to live.
It wasn't much more than $3 an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah, I remember every year that I instructed or was a supervisor or something at a ski area, I never made enough money to cover my living expenses. And I went into debt deeper every one of those years.
Wow.
You were spending a good bit of time up in New England, weren't you? As well?
I grew up there.
Okay,
and,
yeah, that's what it was. Your family still there?
What's that?
Is your family still there?
Yeah, my mom and dad are still up there.
Okay.
And I haven't boarded there in a long time, which is unfortunate because they've had some good winters recently.
What kind of employee was Paul at Whitetail?
Well, you're asking someone who probably wasn't that great of an employee himself.
We snowboarded a lot.
Paul was actually an awesome employee. When you're a snowboard instructor, I think being happy and being able to make the people around you happy, your students, clients, is probably one of the most important traits. And Paul was always smiling and happy, and he obviously loved snowboarding, and that made for some happy clients.
Would you say that he was happy like 420% of the time?
No, more than that.
840 maybe?
Happy when I had him doing stupid projects like building a skateboard ramp at a ski area.
Oh, geez.
What? I never heard about this.
Tearing down a perfectly good vert ramp. We don't even need to talk about that.
Yeah, that turned into a bad.
We're going to get bad karma from that at some point. I've probably already had it.
I don't even know what happened to it after we left. I'm sure that it just got torn down and thrown in the trash.
Sorry, Eric Gibson.
Yeah, it was a good idea, but bad execution.
We meant well. We just didn't really end up having the time to mess with it.
Yeah, and then what were they going to do with it afterwards?
Right.
In the summertime, like they didn't really have summer program figured out for it. And
Well, they didn't want it there anyways, really.
they put it, where did they put it? In the back?
It was in the boneyard, like back in that spot where they kept like old lift poles and lift chairs and maintenance items and gears and
Where the rattlesnakes breed.
right, pretty much.
I remember skating that in snowboard boots.
Absolutely, with the coping not even bolted on yet, and the decks I think were just laying on.
There was no deck.
Oh, that's right, there was no deck yet.
It was just plywood going up to the edge.
Yeah, because we finished it in snowboard boots, and the coping was still loose, but we had to skate it. So, yeah, we skated it in boots.
How tall was it?
That's the sad part. We cut it down. It was It was Gibson's old 12-foot vert ramp, and I think it was 12 feet. And we cut it down. What was it, like 7 or 8? Maybe 6. I don't remember.
We might have cut it down to like 6.
Yeah, we butchered it pretty bad. It was cool a couple times we skated it.
I guess, but you couldn't grind or anything on it because there was no coping. It was just the edge of the plywood.
Right.
So how did this negotiation go? How did it come to be?
Well, I think Marty pretty much like somebody at Whitetail like loved Marty and trusted him, and he said, "Well, hey, I want to bring skateboarding to Whitetail," and he made him think it was a good idea, and it was a great idea to us. And I maybe I'm interpreting this wrong. This is kind of how I saw it, and he fought tooth and nail pretty much and got a tractor trailer out to Gibson's house. We were out there, tore this vert ramp down into sections, cut it up in pieces, and might have taken it for the most part fully apart, and then took it back over there and rebuilt it, but just cut it down 5-6 feet.
Yeah, I think we were looking at it as at full size. Not a lot of people would be able to skate it then,
right?
And we're thinking of making it into a good sized mini ramp, but yeah, like too many of the things I've done in the past, it was seriously underfunded. Definitely over optimistically planned. You know, I'm like, yeah, we'll just go get Paul and I'll just go get this ramp. We'll just set it up.
And that's what it was.
or I'll get this ramp and people will magically volunteer to help set it up, and it'll magically get done. And then the people will, like Field of Dreams will, if you build it, they will come. And the reality is that it was a lot more work than we had thought. And when we went to execute it, it didn't get really completed. And people would rather be snowboarding than setting up a ramp. And then the season was over, and my job was only until the end of the season. So who knows what happened with it after that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with snowboarding is like when we were building that ramp, the only time you could find people that would say, yeah, let's go do it, let's go work on it now, is if it was raining, because nobody was riding. So me and Marty are like, nah, we've worked on it all day, we're done.
I didn't know that piece of the puzzle for that ramp. One of the first mini ramps I skated when I moved out here was in West Virginia, and it supposedly has pieces of that ramp in it. I skated it with Eric Gibson, as a matter of fact, and he was like, yeah, this is, my brother and I built this, and then it got taken apart.
Is that the old
spine?
Is that his old spine? That was his old spine, right?
I don't know.
I think that was his old spine, which sat next to the vert ramp.
Okay, that could be. That could be. That would make sense. All right.
That was sick, too. That was, I think, a 5 or 6 foot spine. It was nice. We didn't ruin that one.
So you kind of dodged the question, or at least the answer that I was looking for a little bit about, Paul's Paul's performance at Whitetail. We'll let it go.
Paul was a great employee.
He's trying to destroy me. He's trying to tear me down.
I have nothing to say about Paul's performance. Nothing bad to say about Paul's performance at Whitetail. He was a fabulous employee.
See, Nate, Marty's a good friend.
Yeah.
Now, I could see Paul in other jobs potentially being a little slacker if there was an opportunity to skate out of work and go surfing or snowboarding or skateboarding. But other than that, I would expect him to be a great employee.
I will tell you this. He actually is the opposite of that. He will work extra hard to make sure that he has the time to do those things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah.
So I'll try not to get at you anymore, Paul. He came over here today, and he saw these bows in my basement that I've had since I was a kid. And we're just always trying to get each other with something, and you'll probably see him on Instagram or something. Since I'm a vegan,
Put him up now.
He thought it was hilarious that I have bows, and that because it's a killing instrument, right?
But you shoot hunters with them.
No,
He probably does.
No, not looking to kill anything.
So it's just target practice?
Yeah, got a target set up out back. I maybe once this spring took them out. Something my wife and I can do together from time to time is just shoot targets.
How's your shot?
I'm okay. Honestly, not good enough to where I would be comfortable if I, had no hang-ups with hunting. With bow hunting, you have to be perfect.
But what about if you were in a zombie apocalypse?
Oh yeah, I'd fuck some zombies up.
You'd survive.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've only got maybe 12 arrows or those, so that'd be a concern.
Marty,
Yeah.
I think, I guess it was a couple years before I met you, but I got shot in the leg with an arrow, so I never really took up hunting since I started off.
How did you get shot in the leg with an arrow?
I know I told you that story a long time ago. It's a long story. I won't even get into it, but it was just me and some dumb friends got off school early one day when we were 14 for like local fair day or something, which is actually going on now. So it was right around now. It was like September 29th. I was like 14. Yeah, we're dorking around. I got shot in the leg with a broadhead. It was great. Super fun.
How did you get it out?
The people at the hospital took it out for me. Now,
Did it go out the way it came in, or did it have to go all the way through?
Well, the broadhead was sticking through the outside of my leg by, like, just outside of my leg. Like the blades were just through. But yeah. So when the paramedics got there, it was kind of at an angle, so I couldn't really lay down with my foot flat because the arrow was kind of stopping my leg from laying down. So they cut it up. They cut the arrow up to my leg, like tight to my leg, so I could lay my foot down. But once I got to the hospital, they kind of pushed it through and just pulled it out. But yeah, it was fun. It was actually the year I started snowboarding. Just got out of
so pleasant.
Yeah, just got out of a full leg cast, severed Achilles tendon, and 2 months later I'm snowboarding for the first time.
Wait, that severed your Achilles tendon? How bad? All the way through?
Oh yeah, in half. But I mean, it was good because it was a clean slice. So it was like if somebody was to cut it with a scalpel, basically, it was easy for them to pull back together and stitch up.
So as I was building,
I'm over here cringing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. It's not an easy story to take, and it kind of keeps me on guard just having that that thought process when I'm hanging out with Paul. Like if things escalate, let's hope it doesn't go to that level again.
Yeah, and Marty, this podcast is about you. Let's talk about you. So back then when we were working at Whitetail, you were working for Kingpin Snowboards.
Oh, yeah, I was repping for those guys.
Which I was telling Nate today that I think to this day that's probably why you like just a big rectangular, wide board with not a whole lot of side cut. Well, you like side cut.
It goes the other way around. I hunted those guys down because I ride with it. For anybody that doesn't already know, I ride with a 0-0 stance. Just because, when I started riding way back when, and there's all these people with these sort of racer stances and competing with these guys, and they had all these kind of pointy stances, and it seemed unnatural to me. When I skateboarded, I had my feet kind of straight across the board or pretty close to it, and so I tried to have a skateboard stance on my snowboard, but I get all this toe and heel drag, and it sucked. It was like on a skateboard, I don't get toe and heel drag and do whatever I want. So, I started looking for a board that was wider that could accommodate that fact, and I came across Kingpin. They were actually making completely custom boards along with some boards in their line that were real wide, and I called them up and said, hey, you have anybody selling these boards in the area? And I was actually repping another company at the time, and as soon as I got my samples from Kingpin, I dropped the other company.
What was the other company?
I don't remember what it was. It was a company that was gone like a year later. I don't even remember what they were.
Yeah, those Kingpin boards were fun, man. You put me on one, and it was totally different than any other kind of board I've ever ridden before. But it was a blast because you had no toe or heel drag, and super, super fun. And especially with like spring slushy conditions, we'd ride what we thought was a half pipe, and You never had heel or toe drag, even when it was like a foot of slush.
Right. Yeah, and I'm actually riding wider boards now than I did then, which I'm thinking of going a little bit narrower because it really puts a lot of torque on your feet and ankles.
Mm-hmm.
So how wide of a board do you ride right now? Like, what is the waist width?
I think the waist is 28.
And what's your boot size?
10.
That you can probably see a little board in front of your toe, huh?
It's got like 3 inches to the edge.
Almost. I actually have that number somewhere. Actually have the number on you and Paul too, but of how much board is in front of your toe. If you're barefoot on the board.
Oh, if you're barefoot on the board, that's interesting. So yeah, I mean, let's get into some of that. It's really interesting to me what you've developed with Custom Cult Snowboards and some of the calculations that go into designing a snowboard specifically for someone based on their riding style and what fits their body. Where did the idea for that? Maybe if you just want to back up and share some background on the company.
Yeah. Okay. Let's totally geek out here. So back then, when I was repping for Kingpin and started experimenting with different specs, and those guys ended up taking me in house to do sales management, marketing for a little bit, and I got to see boards being made, and I got to actually make my own boards and get to see how they made custom boards and what was involved in it. And also got to experiment a lot more with board specs. It was, an eye-opening experience, just how different you can make a board by tweaking just one spec, just changing your waist width or just changing your side cut radius. And, most people don't get to have that experience. They go to a board shop and they pick between different models, and there's all kinds of different stuff going on with each board. No two boards have just one spec really tweaked, unless you're looking at the same model, regular, mid-wide, and wide. And that's about it other than that. So I got to play with that, and I learned that if you can get those specs dialed in to exactly what's right for your stance and your foot size and that sort of stuff, and kind of snow you're on in your body, it makes boarding a lot more fun. When it's easier, it's a lot more fun. And so after Kingpin closed up, and I worked for another board company, and then moved on from there to actually open up my own shop and own custom production facility. And
what was the name of that company?
It was called Garage Industries, and I made a brand called Custom Craft. And the technology back then wasn't what we have now. Like, we could make boards back then that were similar to what we have now, but the ability to connect with the end user like we have now just didn't, obviously didn't exist. We didn't have smartphones the way we do now. We didn't have tablets, or computers weren't quite as mobile back then. So
unless it's a face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, and what I ended up having was people would have the funds to get a custom board and the interest, but not the know-how. So, the people that said, "Oh, I'd like a custom board," could call me up or one of the other custom board makers, and they would run into a situation where they didn't know what it was they wanted. They didn't know what it was that would work better for them or what they needed. And maybe, someone like Paul might say, "Hey, I want a board that's wider so that I get less toe or heel drag." But that person might not know any of the other specs. So I'd end up in like hour or 2 hour long phone conversations with clients designing their board for them. And it was extremely cumbersome. It was difficult for me. It was difficult for them. It was intimidating for people that never even bothered to call, to think about it like, oh, I got to call somebody and tell them I don't know what I'm doing and order a custom board and talk through it with them. It's an intimidating situation to be in. So I knew that it was definitely hurting sales to be in that situation. And
What were some of the things you were doing at that time as you go through these conversations to start to build off of each one and kind of streamline the process? Did you put like a funnel or a questionnaire or something together to, make those conversations flow better?
I guess I kind of took them through the process that I went through myself and asked them, what kind of experience are you having on the equipment you're riding now? And, I'd figure out if their board's too narrow or too wide or too long or too short, or their side cut radius is right for them, if it's too stiff or too soft or whatever it may be, through some questions. A lot of people, they don't know, like, hey, when I lay over a carve, I lose my edge. And they don't know that, well, is it because you're not setting your edge, or is it because your toe or your heel is dragging and lifting the edge off the snow? And that's where, an instructor might come in and be able to see that, witness it. But people didn't know about that stuff. They would just have no clue what it was that was causing them to lose their edge and think, oh, it's just the board. In reality, it was their toes.
Yeah.
and then trying to figure out, well, what kind of style do you want to have? Do you want to ride like Paul Horning, or do you want to ride like Nate Masson?
We all want to ride like Paul Horning.
I want to ride like Nate Masson.
I miss riding with Paul. I haven't ridden with Paul in a long time, and if you don't catch up with me when you come out west this winter, Paul, I'm going to cry myself to sleep at night.
Man, I hope I can come out west this winter. I don't know if that's going to happen for a while, but I'm going to try.
Well, I know you got the babies, but did you come out last winter?
I didn't. I haven't been out in, I don't know, maybe last time I was out was for a skate trip in, I don't know, was that the year before last maybe? I think I came out twice that summer to skate in Denver, but I didn't go up to the mountains at all. But hopefully next year I'm going to try to get, we had a little crew that we did a little trip out to Summit County a few years back. We called it Bro 12. It was in 2012, and try to get that crew back together, maybe do like a 5-year thing next year or the year after, or maybe add a few people, get Nate to come out, and whoever else wants to roll out from this area. But it's a good time. But yeah, and get you out there. I haven't ridden with you probably since the Whitetail days, like back in the mid '90s maybe.
Yeah, did you go up to Stratton that year?
Yeah,
a couple later you went up there.
Yeah, because I think you guys had a house in Dover, right outside of Mount Snow, and I was staying somewhere over there near Mount Snow, and I think that's actually when I met. Chad Otterson was riding for you, so I think I met Chad then. I think maybe Todd stayed with you guys as well. Dunlap?
I don't remember where Todd stayed, and having a house, that might be a stretch. We were couch serving.
Okay, yeah, but you guys knew somebody right across from Mount Snow. I think it was like right across from the Pipe at Corinthia or something.
With Teddy and Terry Raw.
Oh, okay.
Did you ever meet those guys?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember much from those days.
You should have, because they're nuts just like you.
I probably met them.
Throw themselves off of anything.
What I guess what regard was Chad involved in things? Paul mentioned that he was riding for you. Is that for Garage Inc?
He rode. Oh no, he rode for Kingpin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't remember where he went from there, but
I think he went
Chad,
to
Chad's
Silence,
an amazing
maybe.
Rider and a great guy.
So you're having these conversations with folks.
From your original question.
Yeah, no worries. You're having these conversations with folks, and you're building these custom boards, but it's frustrating. And I'm seeing the seeds being planted for the business today. Where does the business go from there?
So yeah, like you're saying, it was tricky to help the end user feel comfortable with the whole process. And it really wasn't all that refined, that process. It was personalized. You get to talk to the guy that designs the board. But the reality is, do they know who I am? Does anybody really care who Marty Bonacci is? And think, hey, wow, Marty Bonacci, I want him to design me a board. Well, yeah, my friends might. People that ride with me might. But the reality is, everybody else doesn't know me from Adam. And, it's kind of that way at all these custom board manufacturers. There's a handful of custom shops around the world that will make you whatever you want. But the reality is, who knows who these board designers are? And if you call them up having no idea what you want for a board, how are you going to trust that they're going to design the board that's going to work for the style that you want to have?
That's a super interesting point to me. Who knows? Because one of the things when I'm thinking about Custom Cult that I'd like to draw a parallel to, and I haven't vocalized this much yet, but is the surf industry. As surfers get better, the majority of them begin to work with a shaper, and they have this relationship of building the board. But the shapers are usually, there's like a celebrity. There's some shapers that are very well known. For the most part,
Right.
That doesn't exist in snowboarding that I can think of.
Now, I've never made a surfboard. I've looked at the process some, but to, I think you can make a surfboard with less equipment and overhead than you can snowboard. So it's probably more realistic for, a pro surfer that is kind of moving towards retirement and competition to open up his own little custom shop and be able to do that sort of thing. But in the snowboard industry, that's not very easy for a pro snowboarder to go, oh yeah, now that I've, wrapped up a 10-year career of, getting gold medals and such, I'm going to just learn how to make snowboards and operate all these machines. And
with a small $250,000 investment to get my shop up and running.
Right. And then years of engineering experience to be able to pull it off too. So.
Yeah, Marty, to jump in real quick, when you had Custom Craft, I mean, pretty much all along, you've been engineering and designing boards for other companies this whole time as well, right?
Yeah, I've been doing all of the board engineering for Smokin' since I guess 06, I think. And I think they've won like a Goodwood and other awards like every year since I started designing their boards. And I know they won 2 Goodwoods this year with boards I designed. I didn't do the graphics, just the engineering stuff. But so I've been doing stuff for them. And then I set up Wagner Ski Factory outside of Telluride, and just been doing consulting stuff here and there.
What are your thoughts on the Magnatraction, the wavy edge? Hasn't Smokin' used that technology on some of their boards?
They have. I wasn't involved in the decision to do that, and there's some backstory there which I'm not going to touch. If you want to interview Jay from Smokin', you can, but I was just the guy that designed what they told me to. So, but yeah, they are using Magnatraction on all their boards, and I put it on there on the in the CAD files essentially based on their request. But my opinion of Magnatraction, Mervin's done some awesome innovative stuff, and I give them major props for having the balls to just try crazy ideas. When Magnatraction first came out, it sounded like a crazy idea, and there's some great logic to it. I don't know that it makes that huge leap in performance that some people believe it does. I haven't personally felt that it improved my ability to hold an edge when I wrote it, but I also wasn't comparing apples and apples. I haven't gone out there and made one board with Magnatraction and one board without the exact same board and taken out and ridden it.
Like you were saying, nobody has a board with just one change ever.
Yeah, and that's that other issue. I've gotten to experience making one change with things when I had Garage Industries, and that was really cool. But we didn't have Magnatraction back then; it didn't exist. So, and then Mervin's been doing all kinds of other stuff, and they've got the rocker that when they first came out with that rocker, and you look at it, you think about, well, that bend sits right at one of the bumps in their magnetraction, they kind of work together the way that it was initially designed. So I think that magnetraction can be great, but is it the characteristic or the particular technology that is necessary to have an awesome board? No, but it's cool for sure.
What about, do you experiment with like lesser noticeable bump outs and side cuts? I know that Burton was doing a thing, for years that they weren't even marketing, about bumping the edge out just a little bit, like a thumb hair or a fingernail. Hair? Yeah, thumb hair, a fingernail width. Just like the width of your fingernail, just under the bindings, and that seemed to make a difference to me.
I haven't experimented with it, no, but at Smokin', we did a lower depth magnetraction than Mervyn was doing, and then a couple of years ago we switched to an even lower depth. So it's pretty shallow, but it's still there. You can see it. I haven't experimented with that. We do have the ability to mess with that a little bit, but with Custom Cult, my new business, we're trying to keep it simple for the start. Yeah,
and in reality, I rode a kind of my backup board. It's fun and PAL and floating when you need something to float, but it's actually a small little 154 Lando Phoenix Lib Tech that I ride. That's got the magnetraction, and honestly, riding solid icy East Coast half pipe walls, that thing has not held a better edge than a regular camber board does. I mean, in my opinion, if you want edge hold, you need to ride a regular camber board.
To be honest with you, I found a bigger difference in the way you tune your edge,
right?
Than the whether it's magnetraction or just a conventional side cut.
So at a point where, to kind of shift gears here a little bit, where I was building shred soles, Paul and I would be talking about that business, going to trips on springs, to Seven Springs or whatever, and he'd be like, "You've got to talk to my buddy Marty." And a big reason for that was because I was reading a book by Tim Ferriss called The 4-Hour Workweek. And he was like, "Marty's read this book. He's the only other person I've heard, tell me about this book." So it's been a long time coming that we finally linked up, and it's been so funny. All of the little subtle things that we have in common. But I would love to hear how you were able to use that book to build your different businesses. And there's one we haven't even touched on, right?
Yeah. I read that book when I was I'd started this business by accident. Actually, all my businesses I've started when I was unemployed, completely broke, and almost homeless. And that one was probably the worst situation.
What do you have to lose at that point? That's great.
Yeah. Well, it didn't cost me anything to start either. So I was in New Hampshire. My oldest daughter was on the way. I was unemployed and just doing oddball things, buying cars that people thought were junk and fixing them and selling them for like 5 times as much money, but still peanuts once it's all done, and doing anything I could to survive. And I looked around the house for something to sell on eBay, and hadn't sold anything on eBay before. And I had some skis that were left over, blemished skis that I had made when I had my first snowboard company. I threw them on eBay, and they sold like right away for a few $100 each. And I was like, wow, that was easy. What else can I sell? So I sold a bunch of snowboards and made a good hunk of money. And then had nothing left to sell. And remembered that I had this buddy out in New Mexico that was making Western belts. And, I don't get down to country music or ride a horse or, I mean, there's a picture of me in a cowboy hat on Facebook, actually on our site on customcult.com too. But at that point, no cowboy stuff going on. So I called up my buddy that was making these Western belts, and I knew he had nothing to do with the internet. And said, "Hey, do you mind if I sell some of your belts online on eBay?" And he said, "No, go right ahead." Well, so he sent me some belts, took some pictures, threw them up on eBay, and I'll be darned if they didn't start selling. And I would print the shipping label out my internet fax, and it would come out his fax machine, and he'd slap it on a box and put the belt in and charge my credit card. And
that's a sweet deal, because one of the challenges in selling a physical product is dealing with the physical product. So you when you were selling the snowboards, you were packaging up, you were dropping them off somewhere potentially to ship them out, and that's a huge time suck. When you can just have somebody else do the shipping for you, that's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. So that kind of started out small. I really couldn't survive on that. I had just finished selling off some boards and made enough money there to survive for a little bit. But then I ended up getting a job setting up the Wagner ski factory, and just ran that business on the side, the belt business. And then he started carrying and making moccasins in his store in New Mexico. So I said, "Hey, you mind if I sell those too?" So I added the moccasins to the site. And, maybe I'd make $50 or a month or $150 a month in profit from it. But I noticed that, I'd get up in the morning and spend a few minutes printing out a shipping label and sending it to the internet fax. If I sold one item, if I sold 10 items, maybe during Christmas season, 10 days before Christmas on one day, I'd spend 5 minutes printing out the shipping labels in a batch and sending them through the internet fax. And I thought, well, what if I sell 100 in a day? Well, then I'd just be sitting there for 5 minutes, printing out the shipping labels and sending them through the internet fax.
Yeah, it scales. Lots of businesses don't scale. That's kind of what I was hinting on before. You don't have to do anything different.
Yeah. So I was looking at that going, wait a minute, there's something here. This is actually a huge opportunity for me, because everybody wears a belt, right? Maybe not everybody wears moccasins, but everyone wears a belt virtually. So I thought it could be a big opportunity. Well, I finished up setting up the Wagner factory, and they didn't need me anymore. So I'm looking for something else to do, and I actually couldn't work in the snowboard industry for anybody that had to do with skis for a year after working for Wagner. It was part of the agreement. So I'm looking for something to do, and I'm looking at this business thinking, this is a huge opportunity. I should do this. And I could see it, but no one around me could. Like my spouse at the time, my family, they're like, "You're never going to make a living selling belts and moccasins," and the business is doing like $100 a profit a month.
Which, by the way, is coming from people that have never even tried.
Right. And so I'm like, hell, I'm taking this plunge. I'm going to focus on this. So I got, a bartending job at Red Lobster, and so that I could have my mental focus on that business. And I started trying to figure out how to expand it, set up a separate store off of eBay and trying to synchronize all the shipping software and figure out how to drive traffic from eBay to the store. And now there's an Amazon store for it too. But I was thinking, this is huge. Everybody around me is thinking I'm crazy and an idiot for working as a bartender and going nowhere with my life and wasting my time on this belt and moccasin business. And I find The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I read it, I get a decent way into it and realize, holy crap, this is exactly what Tim Ferriss is talking about. I am on track here. This makes perfect sense. This guy's validating my decision to focus on this business.
Right. And to share a little bit about what Tim's book is about, he, in his early 20s, had a a brain supplement business. I think it was called Brain Quicken or something like that. And he grew it to where it was doing, pretty good six-figure revenues, but he was kind of in the CEO role, and it didn't scale the way that your business you just kind of happened into. Luckily, to where whatever you were doing resulted in the same amount of work. He, on the other hand, was super stressed out, working 80 hours a week, just going crazy until he kind of broke and just had to step away from the business, and realized that once he stepped away from the business and took this vacation and barely even worked on the business at all, that the business still worked. And that's kind of where the 4-hour work week comes from at a very high level, right?
Yeah. He was going to sell it. He had a buyer, and then and he realized he couldn't sell it because he was a necessary part of the operation of the business. And the only way he could sell it and get that huge payout was if he made himself not necessary, made the business operate on its own. And when he did that, they backed out. He lost the buyer, but then there was nothing for him to do. So he went on vacation for 2 weeks, and there were no problems while he was gone. So he stayed on vacation. And then I think he was making I think his profit was like $10,000 a month or something from the business when he left, when he went on vacation. And then shortly after, it was making $40,000 a month in profit. So his profits went through the roof when he stepped away.
That's a great problem to have.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the belt and moccasin business hasn't created that kind of problem for me yet. I wish it would, but yeah. And, even though I'm not necessarily a cowboy, you can't tell from my profile picture with the cowboy hat, but and don't wear moccasins all the time, not the Native American or whatever.
So you wear them some of the time?
I'm going to avoid that question in case any of my customers are listening. Well, you can't skate in them, I'll tell you that. And but it's not necessarily my passion. But the customers that I've dealt with in that business, they're all awesome. Like, very few people are unpleasant to work with. They've all been really nice. And that was one of the things I was afraid of. Like, if I dove into that business and made it any bigger, I was thinking, oh no, I'm going to end up having all these customer service nightmares. Yeah, I got people that, want to return something or exchange something or whatever, and it's inconvenient. But there aren't too many people that aren't super nice. Like, I was surprised at how nice most of the people are. So, and I ended up growing it to produce between $1,000 and $1,500 a month in profit. So I was able to almost survive on it as an individual, but not really support a family on it. So it's been a nice little side income.
And what a good just training program for future businesses as well. Yeah,
huge. I just had a job interview recently, which I'm not sure why I bothered, but a job interview with a huge jewelry company. They've got like 250 employees, and they're looking to expand their internet sales, and they're only selling like, I don't know, $10 or $20 million a year of jewelry online, and they want to grow it bigger because it's too small for them, And they've got this huge QVC business in which they're doing, $150 million a year or something on. So they want to expand it. So I was actually probably one of their most qualified candidates, selling a handful of belts and moccasins online. But, I was flattered that I got the interview and was able to speak intelligently about that type of stuff with them, about selling things online. But reality is I'm really small time compared to what they got going on.
Yeah, they want to scale at a whole another level. That's interesting.
It was a little. I was pretty nervous in the interview. it didn't show, but I was like, oh shit, these guys are on a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. To me, that comes down to allocating marketing dollars in the right verticals, right? I mean, they've got to have a big marketing budget, I would think, to
they got a huge marketing budget. They were talking to me about things that I've done. I've done with the belt and moccasin business. They were talking about pay-per-click advertising and conversion rates and return on investment and that stuff. And I understood it. I've experimented with it, but I've never, making the small dollars I do in the belt and moccasin business, I haven't taken like what they would do, taken tens of thousands of dollars a month and throw it into pay-per-click advertising as an experiment. Like wow. I'd go, oh, I've got $50 on this. Let's try this. Oh, okay, my budget's gone and I don't have any more money to test this with. And those guys, I could talk to them about it because I've tried it, but I couldn't say, oh, I've run hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ads on Google, and these are the results I've gotten, which is I think kind of what they were looking for.
Yeah, that whole dynamic is in some ways similar to what you were talking about before with custom snowboards. Is if you have an ad campaign with all these parameters set up, and then you change one thing, just like changing one thing on the snowboard, it can have a hugely different result.
Right. So we've left a few questions and moved to different topics. Where did we leave off?
Well, I think what would be interesting for me is we started talking, after Paul kind of finally got us introduced after he'd been telling me about you for years. About a year ago, I think we had our first conversation, and it was really cool. I mean, we had all these things in common. We'd both read the 4-Hour Work Week. We both have internet businesses. And you started to tell me about Custom Cult. You didn't know what the name of it was at that point in time, but you knew that, and I knew coming out of that conversation that this was something that was fundamentally different than the way that snowboards have been made and purchased. I mean, it was basically a disruptive technology that you were developing. And at the time, we were discussing it being app-based, right? So when did you start to kind of have the idea for Custom Cult as it is today? And when did you start to work on it?
Well, I was thinking about this morning before our call, and I forgot about this poor timing of everything. About a little over a year ago, I went to my storage unit where I had stored, all the hard to get things that I would need to set up another snowboard production facility. And I had been storing them for years, not really anything of value, white elephant kind of stuff. I had a base sander that didn't work, but it was super wide. I could sand snowboard that was like 1.5 feet wide on it. Crazy stuff like that, but it has no value, like, cause it wasn't working, but I could fix it, and, some tooling that would be useless to anybody else. But I had all this stuff that basically I could take like $500 or $1,000 and this stuff and a couple months of work and have a full custom snowboard factory. And it was in storage. And about a year ago, I went to the storage unit, took all that out and threw it in the trash. I junked it all.
Wow.
And then 6 months later, back in December, I was talking with a website coder friend of mine that was helping me with some stuff on the Belt and Moccasin site. And he's like, whatever happened with the snowboard thing? And, how come you didn't do it and that? And I said, well, I wanted to make it so that we could have a variety of designers offer up personalized designs for people that like their riding style. And initially I was thinking pro riders. I was thinking, it'd be great to have 10, 20, 50 different pro riders, and they don't have to be the hugest name pros, but guys that people see, guys or girls that people see in videos and go, geez, I love their style. I'd like to emulate them. And their fans could go to their page and essentially have a board designed for them by that pro. And when we were talking, I'm holding my mobile phone. We didn't have that when I opted out of this. When I said, I'm not gonna get back into making snowboards. We didn't have those mobile phones. You couldn't go to a website no matter where you are. You'd have to take out a notebook computer, and the cell service wasn't all that workable for a mobile computer at the time when I closed up my snowboard company. So that idea just literally sat there in my mind since 2000, 15 years probably.
That's a good incubation period.
Yeah. Thinking, I mean, you don't want to have a board designed for you by someone you don't know. You want a board designed for you by someone whose riding style that you look up to, that you'd like to emulate. You don't want a board designed for you by somebody that's a poser or somebody that sucks. And you don't want a board designed by just like engineering nerd. You want to know they actually know what the heck they're doing all around. So, I scrapped the idea back then because I couldn't afford a bunch of pros to create a system like that. And, it said, well, someday if I end up having a couple $1 million in my pocket and I can afford some big name pros and whatever, maybe I'll try it. And that day hasn't come. But that morning when I was sitting there with my coder holding my mobile phone and we're talking and I'm talking about the types of people that we would have as influencers on this site, essentially pro riders, people that have some influence and people that are looked up to, it occurred to me that these people that are looked up to by other riders aren't just pros. I mean, shit. I know a bunch of people that look up to Paul Horning's riding.
Absolutely.
Where are they
He's
at?
not a huge name pro. I mean, shit, I looked up to his riding. I was like, damn it. That guy's hardcore. Like, I remember way back in the day when we made this huge gap at Whitetail, which is small now. I mean, shit. My kids would probably do it switch. But back then, we all looked at it after I made it in the middle of the night with the snowcat, and we made this huge gap with a straight vertical wall on the landing side. For if you fell short, you'd die. And we all looked at it and said, "That's impossible. No one will ever clear that." And then I remember, someone saying, "Holy crap, Paul jumped the gap!" And I'm like, "No way."
Best jump they ever had there.
I get down there and people are hucking themselves over this giant gap, and Paul's one of them. And I remember that day there were a lot of people that were looking up to Paul going, "Holy crap, I wish I could ride like him." And, there's a ton of those people out there that have a bunch of people looking up to their riding ability or their knowledge and skills. And I'm holding the mobile phone thinking about this and realizing, wait a minute. There's all those people, instructors, guys that have hot YouTube channels, some hot shits that have podcasts.
Did you say hot shits?
Yeah, exactly. And these guys all have a ton of people looking up to their riding ability and their knowledge about boarding. Why not put the power in their hands? It doesn't have to be Shaun White, Why Shaun White get to...
Let's hope not.
Yeah, why Shaun White get to influence everybody's board buying decisions? I mean, the reality is Nate Moussan can talk to his friends and fans directly and be able to help them get a board that fits their body better than just going to the store and buying one of Shaun White's boards. So from that point on, I was thinking that now might be the time. And this is back in December. And I actually called a bunch of people. I was my hugest skeptic with this. I was like, you know what? It was really hard starting a snowboard company, growing it, and then realizing that it wasn't working and having to close it. It was a super painful experience, a ton of work. I won't even get into all the hardships related to it, but so I was really skeptical about it and wanted to make damn sure that this was a real worthwhile thing to do. So I called some instructors I knew. I called some friends in the industry, and I said, look, tell me the truth. What do you think of doing something like this? And I laid it out, what it was I was thinking of doing. And every single person said, holy shit, like you said, that's disruptive technology. That is awesome. You should do it. And it took me a month of calling everybody and hearing those responses over and over before I decided to actually do it. It might have been more than a month.
Did you get any feedback the other way that would say like, and I think I remember this from a conversation that we had, and maybe it was from your previous business, but that'll never work, but I would like a custom board?
No, I didn't get any feedback like that. Yeah, that was one of the things I heard before when I had my old custom board company, and there really wasn't a system for selling it. I actually went around SIA back when it was in Vegas with a prospective investor and business consultant. And, I was about to close up my business, and he wanted to see what was really there. And he went around to other board companies, talked to company owners, and asked them what they thought of custom boards. And every single one of them said, that wouldn't work. Nobody wants a custom board. But I'd like one.
Yep.
It was the most confusing thing for that investor. He never ended up investing, but he's like, something's there, but I don't understand what it is.
Well, the timing just wasn't right, and that's what it incubated for all those years until the technology was there, and that technology was the smartphone.
Yeah. Probably could have done it a handful of years ago when the iPhone came out, but now it's all settled in. And I don't know if I know anybody other than children that don't have a smartphone. Who still has a flip phone? Do you know anybody? Oh, Paul, you probably have a flip phone.
I wish I did.
I have a
couple. I wish my wife had a flip phone.
I have a couple people I know that have gone to them intentionally.
Myers has a flip phone.
Okay.
Myers might have one of those old handheld things that like you have to strap to your head.
I know a couple of folks that have gone to them intentionally just to reduce distractions in their lives. But for the most part, everybody has a smartphone.
So the timing's right, I guess.
Yeah, so Marty, pretty much since the day I met you, the one thing about you versus everybody else that I grew up snowboarding with was you looked at snowboarding a totally different way. You always wanted to change something with your snowboard. You always thought there was a better way to make it, or you were always really curious and I guess because you knew about board making. I never saw a board. I still haven't seen a board made to this day. You did at a young age, and you were really intrigued by it. So you versus everybody else I knew growing up, none of us really cared about it. We're just like, oh, we're riding this board, we like it. Or you see some pro riding it, you're like, oh, I got to ride that board, support that guy, whatever. But you always thought about it totally different. How are you implementing that into the board you're making now? The technology, are you going to experiment with anything new? Or are you kind of sticking to what works, or what's going on with custom craft? I'm sorry. What's going on with Custom Cult? Sorry.
They sound similar.
Yeah. Are you putting dirt?
The spirit of it is the same, I guess.
Are you putting dirt in the top sheets? I mean, is there a secret?
That was a silly experiment back in the day.
Whit loves that board still.
Simulate a little grip tape on that. I tried to get it back from him because that's a heck of an embarrassing experiment. But I don't know how I actually ended up sending that to him. Anyway, yeah, I've always been a total gearhead. You know, there's people in every industry that mess with their equipment, and you know, and you see these mountain bikers, they're obsessed with tweaking every little thing on their bike and dialing things in and adjusting the suspension and everything, trying to get it just right. And I've always been that way with my board, messing with my bindings and you know, when I actually got around to setting up a production facility, just messing with my specs and making a bunch of different boards. You know, I found the biggest difference in performance in my snowboard has been dialing and specifications, and then behind that is, you know, materials and other technologies. But keeping the board as simple as possible really helps in its performance. You know, I've tried a lot of boards where they got way too over-engineered with stuff, and the more complicated you make it, the less pure it is. But I guess where I'm taking things now with actually making boards is focusing on the custom part. You know, we're using the top end materials, best stuff you can get, but it's not simple to make a completely custom board. There's a lot that goes into it. If you think about what's required to make something, usually you make things in a large batch because to make one of them ends up being real costly. So like, take for instance a typical snowboard. It's made on a mold that they make hundreds or thousands of the same board on, and you can't really change that mold. It's set in stone, and if you want a different model, you have to make new mold. And then there's other jigs and parts and stuff that have to be made in batches. So to create that in a one-off fashion, you have to have molds, jigs, and whole production processes that are adjustable for different sizes and different specifications. Now, on my resume recently, I put something on there that I got canned once for taking an 8-hour job and turning it into a 5-minute job.
You put that on your resume?
I put that on my resume as one of my skills or something. I think I called it problem solving or something like that, or whatever. And that I was once laid off or let go from a job because I turned the 8-hour job into a 5-minute a day job.
That's a couple of things there that interest me. Is one, you know, most people wouldn't highlight ever a time that they were fired. And two, you just took a negative and turned it into a positive. Yeah.
Well, the reality is it was a crazy, huge positive. I was at Wagner Skis, and when they hired me to set up their facility, I think they were expecting that once things were set up, I would spend 8 hours a day in front of CAD, computer-aided drafting program, drawing out all the parts for the skis. And I had written a piece of software before that you could just take the specifications of the skis or snowboards and plug it in, and it would kick out the toolpath files to run the computer-controlled machines to cut out all the parts. And so I got there, I tweaked the software to work for their skis, and you could literally just type in the specs of the skis and save the files for the machines to run in like a minute.
Where did you learn how to write software?
Nerd school?
Well, that's an interesting question. I actually went to computer camp when I was like a kid, and like they had Commodore 64s and Apple IIs.
Yeah, the Apple IIe, I had one too.
Yeah. So it was, I learned a little bit of BASIC back then, but then as I went through high school, I quickly realized that I hated sitting in front of the computer screen all day, and that if I went into computer science as a major, I'd probably die a virgin.
A rich version.
Yeah, so I jumped out of that major, but
I think those dudes buy a lot of hookers, so you'd have been all right.
I probably would have had the money to do that. But then I stopped doing that, and then when I started making custom snowboards, it was in the garage with like particle board jigs and stuff, and no computer controlled equipment. And I was looking at a machine that would cut out the components for me with software, and I found a CNC router that would do that, and I had to make a special head for it to cut the base material and to die cut the base graphics. But the software to create this stuff was cumbersome. You'd have to draw it all in CAD, and it would take forever. And that's what I think Wagner was thinking. I'd spend 8 hours a day drawing 4 or 8 pairs of skis parts and tooling. And instead I said, heck, I'm going to buy this machine that I've never run before, that I don't know how to run, and I'm going to write some software to create the files to run this machine, so that all I have to do is type in the specs of the snowboard. And this is back in like 99, I think. And I did that. Before I ordered the machine. It was going to take a month. I wrote some software, and I set up the machine when it arrived, and I went to run the software and got nothing but errors, and had to spend another month rewriting it. But I got it to work. It was pretty rudimentary back then, but it worked. I taught myself how to run the machine, and I taught myself how to write that software, because I wanted to make custom boards. So it was kind of like I didn't really have any formal training in any of it, but taught myself what I needed to know to make it happen.
Sure. And is that same, does some piece of that software live on in the Custom Cult algorithm now, or is that a complete new draft from the ground up?
A piece of that lives on, and it's a whole nother level now. Back then I couldn't really morph the shapes and the nose and tail and stuff, and I modified that software so I can actually morph those shapes, and it now integrate. Wow. I lost my ability to speak.
I'll throw you a lifeline and say integrates.
Yeah, that's it. Integrates. Thank you.
I'm just so amazed by the software, because my day job is selling financial aid software, and we have a proprietary chunk of software that no one else can replicate, and that's what makes us stand out. And that's what, on a huge level, makes Custom Cult stand out. I can see Paul Horning ride the 7-spring super pipe, the 22-foot super pipe, and watch him going, double head high out, just blasting, and walk up to him and go, hey man, what do you ride? Like, I want to ride your board. And he can just pull out his phone and say, well, this is what I ride, but Nate, you're obviously way heavier than I am, so you're going to need a little bit different one. And I can just type in my specs, my height, weight, inseam, boot size, and get Paul's board tweaked for me. That's fucking amazing. I mean, there's no other way to do that. And that's when, when you were explaining that to me, the analogy that made the most sense to me is the instructor who's working with the student. Maybe it's a kid who's getting into snowboarding and spends all winter in kids camp, and then is ready to get their first snowboard and wants to ride like the instructor that they've been, looking up to all winter. Well, that kid can get the board scaled hugely different, because the instructor's an adult and the kid's a kid. The scale there is going to be crazy different, but he or she can get the board that the instructor is riding and emulate that style.
I'm super excited about actually being able to bring this to the point it's at now. I had thrown away a snowboard factory because I never thought it would take place.
What is the, one of the things that we've been posting up some of the different brand ambassadors or different folks involved, and both Paul and I are lucky enough and honored and thankful to be involved. But as these different folks that are being involved are being announced, we've been posting them to our Facebook pages and kind of, rolling the company out. And some of the feedback has been interesting of people that have gone in and used the calculators initially. I don't know if you've looked at any of the Facebook comments, but my board, for example, I ride a board a good bit smaller than what would probably normally ride for someone my height and weight. So that shows up in the calculations. If somebody even smaller than me gets the board, all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, why is this a 148? I've never ridden a board that small in my life. And that to scale, if I was in their body, would be potentially what I would ride and like. And I kind of am in a roundabout way asking, when does the full launch happen with this company? When is the app available? What's the timeline?
It's up now. And we're promoting it now. There's stuff we're cleaning up on it, but it's actually fully functional. It's funny that you mentioned the differences about the design tools and yours in particular. Yours is the one that I actually had the most brain twisting over, because you do ride a pretty short board for your size, and when you put, say, my height in there, it calculates a board pretty small for me, I would say. But if I was riding where you're riding, if I was riding at Seven Springs, which is not 2 feet of powder at Taos, I would ride a shorter board. Without in East Coast conditions, I would definitely ride a shorter board, and I'd get a nose and tail that are as short as I could stand, because there's no point having a big long nose and tail when you're riding in East Coast conditions.
Yeah, and I ride, just so everyone knows, I ride a 10.5 boot, and I ride a 158. I've ridden a Rome Agent for the past couple of years, and it's one of my favorite boards ever. But I'm so excited to be able to ride one of your boards, because there are 1 to 2 little specs that I've always wanted to change on the Agent, and that's basically what I did. I mean, to be fully transparent, the board that I designed with you is an Agent tweaked just a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, just for the listeners, how tall are you?
Oh, I'm 6'2", and I weigh 205 pounds.
6'2", and you're at a 158.
Yep.
Yeah, so like the other guys I know that are around your height, like take for instance Jay at Smokin', I think he rides like a 166.
Wow.
And and he's about your height, so like you ride a pretty short board, but I'm sure it has to do with where you're at. And we should probably put some text about that in your profile and in your board description. I never got around to updating that with all the craziness, but
cool. Yeah, I definitely will.
Has mine changed from Paul needs a hug?
Yes, I updated that. I had to take out the part about you drinking beer before your riding and during your riding, drinking a bunch of beers.
Not a bunch.
You just sounded like a total alcoholic.
Right. How many beers have you had since this podcast started, Paul?
I'm on 3. On 3. It's afternoon though, so I'm good. Yeah, going to a 2-year-old.
Morning where I'm at. So,
going to a 2-year-old birthday party today. I gotta get ready to have fun.
Get ready to tolerate that.
Right.
So are your daughters turning 2?
No. Buddy's daughter's turning 2. Yep.
How old are your kids?
Mine are they'll be 11 months at the end of this month. They're born on Halloween, so they'll be a year and a little over a month.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
So Paul, when you come out to Colorado this winter for a ride,
mm-hmm.
Well, I'll take you by the factory too. You can actually
I want to check it out.
Where it's made.
Yeah, for sure. I've still never seen one made other than like, internet stuff. But yeah, it's cool.
So Marty, the website's up and running. What about the app?
There's no app, but I have made a point to develop the site to work with mobile phones first and regular computers second.
Okay.
So if anything's not working on my phone, I'm all over our coders. But, I check to make sure it's working on a computer second. So you can use it on a mobile phone just fine. And one of the reasons we did that was because if you're on a mobile app, it would have to update that mobile app for every change to the system. Every time we change the system, which, we're constantly doing improvements to it. And what we just added recently was the ability to tweak your design. So if you take one of your fans to your page, Nate, and they go through your design tool and they're riding on the West Coast instead of East Coast, and they're going to be riding some powder and they want to make their board longer, they can now do that. There's now an advanced configuration button underneath those specifications when they go through your design tool. They just click that and they can tweak those specs.
Could someone come to the site and just design a board from the ground up, not based off somebody else's specs?
We were going to do that, and it's probably still in the works. But at this point, you've got to go through someone's design tool, and after you do, and you click the advanced configuration button, then you can change every spec. So they still have to go through someone's design tool at this point. I said, we got to get this done first, and then we can add the other part. So I don't know how long it's going to take us to add the other part. This site's development is taking about literally 10 times longer than I had anticipated, or my coders have told me.
That's about right for like real estate development, construction, software building, all those things are, the timelines push out. What about like graphics? Can I put any base graphic, any top sheet graphic? How does that work?
I don't know what we're doing with that at this point. Right now, it's you can choose what each designer has up there. So, or expert has up there. So on yours, you have a graphic that you provided for us, and we colorized it. So you've got a couple graphic color options. So if someone goes through Nate's design tool, then they'll see what those two graphics options are. Hopefully soon we'll be adding a button underneath that where they can say, I want to choose from all the graphics available from Custom Cult and be able to switch to different graphics. But that's not operational at this point. But if you call me up, if someone places an order and calls me up and says, hey, Marty, I want to switch to Nate's graphic from Paul's graphic, we can do that manually on our end. But the site doesn't have that ability at this point.
Okay. You have a great video on the website that I would really urge everyone to watch and think about the boards that they've purchased in the past. I'd say that kind of the hook to the video is, that snowboard companies have sold you graphics for years, but what do you really need? And it circles back into the conversation that we've been having this whole time about board functionality. What went into making that video? Where did some of the background for that come from?
Wow. I guess that, that initially it came from my own experiences of trying to figure out how to be able to ride better, and figuring out that, I'm trying to emulate this rider or that rider by riding the exact same board that they're on. Back in the day, it was wow, I want to ride better. What should I do? Oh, I'm going to buy this Pro Riders board, and discover that I now ride worse. And trying to figure out, how's that Pro Rider riding better on that board, and I ride worse. And realizing that, oh wait, that Pro Rider has a foot size his foot size is 3 sizes smaller than mine. And I'm getting all this toe and heel drag, and no wonder I'm losing speed across the center of the pipe, because I can't hold an edge across the center of the pipe the way you can at the same angle with my foot size. So, that was a big realization for me, that it was the board specs play a big part in what you can do with a board, and the relationship between those specs and your body. But yeah, that's kind of where the spirit of that came from. I didn't really want to, bash other companies. I don't think they necessarily intentionally are trying to mislead anybody. But the reality is that, like I said, for every board model, they have to make tooling, and it costs a lot of money to do that. Most companies, actually, there's only a couple companies that have even close to the ability to make custom boards in the way we do, and they have significant costs to make one unique board. I was talking to other manufacturers trying to see what other capabilities are out there, and I couldn't find anybody that could produce a board one-off style at the costs that we're able to, because of the technologies that we've implemented.
To that point, as you're saying that, I've known different high-level pro riders over the years that have had their pro graphic on a board that is completely different than what's on the retail shelves, and then come to find out that the company that they ride for isn't even making that board for them through their normal production cycle. It's coming, probably, I would imagine, from a shop like yours.
Yeah, I don't know that they come necessarily from the same type of shop, but I think the manufacturers try to, finagle it onto whatever they can, mix and match things. But yeah, it's not that easy for them to do that. But they're producing huge volumes of boards. You look at Burton, they're probably making in the neighborhood of thousands of each model. And when you're doing that, it doesn't make sense to set up a system that works to make one of that model. So,
well, I think it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, just last season I needed a new board, and I used to hate on all the gimmicks with reverse camber and combination cambers, and I was just from the old school. Regular camber works. Why change it? And then I got on a little LibTech 153 Banana Magic or something like that. It was Tim from Pit Crew's board. I took it out west with me. Well, that thing actually rode through 2 feet of powder way better than my regular camber 58.
That was the Attack Banana, right?
The Attack Banana, that's what it was. So I was kind of sold on that. Rode a lib for a while, for a year or two, and then I stepped on an old. I mounted up an old stepchild I had, which was regular camber, a pretty stiff board that I like, and was amazed, and it felt so good. And it's funny, I started yelling at Nate, like, how come you let me ride this combination camber crap? I mean, I understand certain places it was great, riding powder it was great stuff. Sometimes slush, you kind of floated on top of it instead of plowing through it. So, I could see the need for it, but for my style of riding, which is mainly super pipe and jumps and just playing around in the park, I want something stable that's not going to wash out. And so last year I'm trying to find a board. It was hard for me to find anything. They don't really make anything that I like to ride anymore. So it's a breath of fresh air that somebody can turn to a company like yours and get something made for the style of riding that they actually do, instead of just having to buy something out of the box.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody thinks that.
Marty, we've covered a ton here, and there's a bunch of stuff I wanted to cover too that we didn't get into, about like internet marketing and nootropics and some of the other conversations that we've had just one-on-one, but I think we'll have to save those for another day. Are there any final words, any parting words you want to leave our audience with?
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Love chatting with you guys. And, Paul, I can't wait to ride with you. And hopefully I'll get to ride with you too, Nate.
Yeah, I'll try to drag him out with me in the next year or two when I come out there.
That'd be great.
Let's make it happen.
What do you mean next year or two? You mean the next 6 months?
I wish, man. We'll see. That's a stretch, but it's a stretch. But we'll see.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's been a lot of fun. And everybody, go to Nate and Paul's page at customcult.com. You can get there either by customcult.com or customcultsnowboards.com. And Nate, go ahead and post a link to your personalized page there. So you should probably tell people the way it works. Like, you go ahead and put in your your body dimensions, your height, your weight, foot size, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it asks for your email address. That's just so we can email the design to you. We're not going to pester you with a whole bunch of stuff, but you put your email in there, and it emails you a link to your design in case you want to get back to it later on.
That's funny.
And on the next page, it actually calculates what Nate or Paul would ride if they were trapped in your body with your ability level and your personal preferences for your stance. And then you can tweak it or whatever at that point.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I am honored and super excited to be a part of it. It's I genuinely feel that it's a disruptive technology and it's going to be extremely successful.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys are a part of it too.
Let's do this again and touch on some of those other topics that we wanted to talk about and talk about the boards once we've been riding them this winter too.
Yep,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Marty, thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much, man.
All right, good chatting with you, Marty.
You too. Take care.
See you, man.
Hey, thanks again for listening. Thank you so much for telling a friend. And thank you for leaving a review on whatever the modality is that you listen to the podcast, whether it be iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. If you want me to walk you through building your own custom snowboard for around the price of a Burton Custom X, just shoot me an email at nate@shredsoles.com and we'll set up a time to talk. As you're doing your holiday shopping on Amazon, please click through the Amazon banner ad located at the website. And finally, major sale on the entire Shred Souls website. Just use the code TOFURKEY when you check out. Sale's good through the end of the month. Until next week, yes, I'm really going to drop another episode next week. Peace and Metallica.
Freedom in my sight. No locked doors, no windows barred, no things to make my brain seem scarred. Sleep, my friend, and you will see the dream is my reality. They keep me locked up in this cage. Can't they see it's why my brain says rage? Sanitarium. Leave me be. Sanitarium. Just leave me alone. In my fear of what's out there, cannot breathe the open air. Whisper things into my brain, assuring me that I'm insane. They think our heads are in their hands.